This is the Fantasy Football Unlimited podcast with your host, Kevin Murray.
Welcome to the Fantasy Football Unlimited podcast. On this episode, we have the perfect guest for this time of year. His passion for college football, Devy leagues, and dynasty fantasy football is undeniable. He's also a passionate girl dad, which, is always something I love to see. From Footballguys and the Devy Royale, it's Kevin Coleman. Welcome to the show, my man.
Hey, man. I appreciate you having me. I know it's been one of those things trying to connect, but we definitely connected. West Coast brethren's out here, so we got to stick together. Not a lot of West Coast people out here in fantasy.
It is true. It's difficult to coordinate those. There's an East Coast bias, and it even comes down to coordinating this in the fantasy world. But I'm glad to have you here. Again, this is the time of year you probably get most excited, right?
I'm exhausted actually, but yeah, I mean, we just dropped like our 152 player rookie guide for Footballguys, and like that takes a lot out of me. So like, coming back out of that, like I'm excited. I love this time of the year, yes, but it's also kind of our heavier lifting for content while everybody else is coming out of the break of like redraft and like the end of the season where they kind of get that rest. Like now it's our time to really dive in and do that stuff. So I love being involved in it and being fully in it. But yeah, I'm also tired. I'm getting a little tired.
I totally understand. No, but obviously, there's no doubt that you've had a huge impact in the world of Devy and Dynasty, which obviously it's led to you being at Footballguys. Talk to me about your experience with Footballguys. What it's been like. Footballguys.com. Such a special industry. Brand. Talk to me about that experience.
Yeah, it's been really cool. I was at Fantasy Pros prior. I was doing a lot of mock drafts and like dynasty stuff for them. Blaine Bots was really well, like kind of before they hired all the newer guys that they have. I was there. And so, when Joe asked me, hey, we want to talk, have that interview that he does, the interview, he'll get on there and you guys just chat and you guys talk about kind of, your content stuff. To be completely honest, like I was never really, we were going to talk about like, fantasy, where I got my fantasy stuff from. I didn't really know what Footballguys was. I didn't really know what anything was because that's not really where I come from. I'm not a fantasy background type of guy. I don't know. I didn't know a lot of fantasy space people. But when I met Joe, it was really cool, and Joe started following me like a year prior. And I guess he was just checking out my work that entire time, which is something to note for you content creators out there. You never know who's following you. You never know where that opportunity is going to come. And then he just kind of jumped on and, it's coming up. Oh man, is it 3 years? I think 2.5 years or something like that pretty soon. And it's crazy how fast it goes, but it's been a lot of fun, learning a lot of new stuff, a lot of stuff I did wrong. And it's one of those companies that, because you were there, like they allow creative freedom. And the one other thing is like, they support you in everything that you want. And they're very family oriented. So, a lot of people are part-time at the company, myself included, with 3 kids. And it's like, hey, listen, I'm doing this with my kids this week. I will get this done to you. And there's nothing like a timeline. Yes, you have to get that done unless it's something big like the rookie guide or stuff like that. But very family oriented. And that's really what stands out to me about them.
Yeah, it's a special group of people, and again, they have the history. They've been around forever, but it's true. It starts from the top. Joe's leadership is incredible.
Yes.
Definitely a brand, a company that if you don't know much about, you should dive into because they, the products are the quantity and quality of content is always impressive. So from a consumer's perspective, what are your favorite resources and features that come out of Footballguys?
So I have a confession. I don't read and consume a ton of content. So I'm going to be out there. Like I'm a very like, I'm kind of agnostic when it comes to, because I don't like to steal people's takes, first of all. And I also like, I'm very limited with the time that I have, but I will say like, obviously, as much as he pains me because he is a big pain in my butt. Jeff Bell does a dynasty roundup every Monday that I really enjoy during the season. And it's like a 5,000 word article every week about dynasty. And that's the dynasty roundup, the one that he does on Mondays, is great. Bob Harris is dropping his fantasy notebook now, which I really have enjoyed. And Bob's one of my favorite people in the space. I love that he is back there too. And obviously, Sigmund and Cecil, and just kind of the podcast that they have, everything that the Audible and On the Couch and those things are really good. I enjoy all of that, in terms of that. And really every article that they pump out of there is quality, like you said, and I think that's the great thing. You can pop on a Football Guys site and you'll see Ben Cummins doing something for Best Ball. Then you see Dave Kluge, doing something for like Chicago, the draft needs or redraft. And it's like, but every time you read it, it's awesome. And I got to give a shout out to, I don't know if you've met Adam Harstead.
Yeah.
Adam Harstead is the craziest guy I've ever met at Football Guys. By far, dude he's crazy. But for me, when I'm reading his work at Football Guys, as someone who writes Dynasty and just reads his stuff, I learn something every time. Now, it's a long-winded avenue of stats and all this crazy analogies and stuff, but it's unique. And that's what I love about it probably the most. It's like it's something out there that's not out there, and you can see that he loves it, but you can learn something from it. So Adam's articles are always a must-read for me. I don't understand all of them, because it takes a special brain to understand all of it. But when I do dive into it and reread it a bunch of times, I really enjoy that content.
I love it. No, that's you just basically displayed like how much variety there is that comes from Football Guys. And Adam, you're right. I mean, his trivia, pretty incredible.
We won trivia night. So those of you that don't know, little inside scoop, when Football Guys has the retreat, they do trivia night and all that. So we won it a couple years ago. But I'll never forget some of the questions on there, like 1927 quarterback and like all this weird stuff going on there. But that's my shining moment at the company, winning trivia night.
There you go. I love it. Now, dude, talk to me a little bit about the 2024 draft guide. You mentioned it early on. I mean, obviously, a ton goes into that. Talk to me about what that is and what people can find when they discover that.
Yeah, we did a draft guide last year for Football Guys, and this year it's bigger, better, kind of like what we're really trying to do. And really what it is, we do 3 versions of it. The first one is version 1.0. We have 152 prospects in there that you should just be aware of when you think of like fantasy football. And when we're talking prospects, we're not talking a small little snippet either. Like these are full-blown pages for every single player right now that you should be aware of in terms of your rookie drafts, in terms of dynasty. And just to give you guys like a kind of a preview of like what you'll see, and it's free. That's the great thing about it. Like you just have to download it, put your email in. If you're a Football Guys subscriber, you get it automatically. But you when you look at the prospect, goes a rundown, scouting report, gives our strengths and weaknesses, analytics index. We also input all of the RAS and combine stuff when that comes, ideal scheme fit, landing spots, projections, and then we tie it all together with rankings. And that's for every position. So when we looked at wide receivers, we did 65 wide receivers. I think we did 36 running backs the first time, over 20-something quarterbacks, tight ends in that mid-20 range. And then we keep doing it. So version 2.0, we'll add all of our RAS score up and all the combine numbers and everything there. Then we'll do consensus rankings to give you guys an idea of what that looks like. And then 3.0 actually releases immediately after the draft. And that's the paid version. And what we do is we look at where these rookies are drafted, and then we give them an outlook. We look, hey, this guy can immediately contribute based on his roster and get you ready for your rookie draft. So it is a process all year. It drops in February, goes all the way to basically May. But the first 2 versions are completely free. All you got to do is go to Football Guys. Football Guide is right on the head, the main page. Enter your email, and you can kind of get a consensus of what it looks like.
So comprehensive, and like this time of year, like that's what you want. Like, the people out there, they're dedicated to dynasty and wanting that content. It's all there. So something I highly recommend. Now, you're also doing a ton of work with the Devy Royale and the new Deciphering Dynasty show. What do you enjoy most about those ventures?
Yeah, the Devy Royale stuff that's more of like a pet project that we started a long time ago that it's turned into like kind of our outlet. We can go just talk about anything we want. Like, in the space, having creativity is fun to do and give you a space there. So we built up the YouTube channel to over 4,000 subscribers. And we talk about dynasty and a little college football in there. We talk about pretty much like just everything related to fantasy. And that's been a lot of fun. And I think that's one thing to kind of look at. We do some dynasty videos. We do some football related videos too, like fixing franchises. One of our most successful series over the summer is we do a top 25 rundown of every college football team, and we do a 20-minute preview of everything. Me and Christian do that, and that was a pretty well received this last year. That was a ton of fun. So really, it's like a sandbox. We just get to try things out and have some fun with it. And in Decipher Dynasty, we just started that basically a month ago, and it's me and Leo Pasinga, and he's a former FSWA finalist and just kind of the OG of Dynasty. He's the DLF Dynasty League football type of guy. And he's been a lot of fun. And what we've been doing is, looking at Dynasty from like a strategy based, theories and like everything there. We've looked at different, like, hey, how do you do startup strategies, more theory based stuff, not really your cookie cutter, buys and sells, which is not like a bad thing. I don't mind cookie cutter content. I think it's great. I think all content is great there. I think Dynasty analysts have a tendency to like snub their nose at that kind of content, what I think is not fair to, content creators. Every piece of content is great content, no matter what it is. You might not like it, but it could be great for somebody. But the Deciphering Dynasty is essentially just getting into it, getting to have some fun. We go live every other Thursday. Me and Leo talk about it, and he has a unique way he looks at Dynasty. So that's a lot of fun for me. Plus, it kind of merges, like I'm a new G kind of, like I've been in the space only 3 years, and he's been in this space for a long. He's old. Don't tell him I told you that, but he's just old. He's been doing this a long time. And so both of us can kind of converge a little bit and talk about Dynasty in different ways. So it's a lot of fun. Then we answer live questions as it goes on our YouTube channel.
That's awesome. Yeah, a couple different perspectives on it. But yeah, deep diving into just deeper layers of Dynasty, which I think has been cool. It's been fun to see those shows come out. Now, obviously, in your professional life, you got there's another world, right? You're an assistant principal. Obviously, you're an educator. Did you always want to become a teacher or get into education? Where did that come from?
Yeah, it kind of just came organically. I didn't wake up one morning and was like, yeah, I'm going to be a teacher in like junior high. Like, I kind of just, I bounced around a lot. And I think that's one thing for younger kids. And I always try to express that when I was a teacher is like, I didn't know what I wanted to do, even until like probably I was 21, 22. Like I still was like, I was kind of going to school, but I was going to like junior college in San Diego. So I wasn't going to that much school. Like I was kind of hanging out, just being dumb kid. And then what actually happened is I started off coaching a 7th grade girls B team. So basketball. And let me tell you, when I say B team, I mean a B team. We won one game that year. But I remember, like, I had a sports background growing up. I played college football for a year. I basketball, baseball. I was huge in sports. That was kind of my thing. Going to coaching was a whole new experience for me. And, to me, that really opened the door, my eyes of like, wow, this would be kind of cool to do this with kids, like to just kind of, not only coach them, but maybe I could teach them too. Like maybe that has that. So that one team really, even though we won one game, we had a lot of fun. Even though we weren't that successful on the court, like the relationships I built off the court and with those girls, and especially I was young too, like just kind of learning how to kind of coach and do those type of things. Like that was a lot of fun for me. And so really what it did, it started me there, like, kind of having that mindset with these kids. And then I was like, all right, well, what am I going to teach? I can't teach math. I'm terrible at math. Obviously, I'm not an analytics guy. So I was like, all right, what do I want to do? And I loved history. History is something I loved growing up. So like, that's how I started. I just got my history degree, then my teaching degree. And that's when I became a teacher. Then I was a varsity basketball coach for a long time. I coached football as well. I actually coached boys and girls volleyball. So that whole coaching thing just transferred over into the classroom. And then now, I this last year I transitioned to as an assistant principal.
That's amazing. That's really cool. How's it been balancing the two different careers, essentially?
Terrible. No, it's, when you're part-time and so like my full-time job in teaching, and teachers are gonna get mad at me when I say this, like you got a little bit more time to do this. I think that's why there's a lot of teachers in the space, because, you can kind of, navigate, you get a lot more breaks, you get those type of things. When you go over to the admin level, my days are long. I'm there from 7 to 5 some days, like pretty much 90% of my days when I'm working. I don't get the same breaks off that teachers do either. Like, I'm not getting spring break off. I have to work 3 days of spring break this year, So one thing that's really been challenging for me as a creator, and as this is like navigating how can you keep a balance. And also I have 3 kids and a wife and trying to keep that balance. And also my big butt needs to get on a treadmill at least 5 days a week. So where am I going to figure out the time? So that's been a challenge this year. We had a baby in last August. So, our 3rd kid, and just trying to navigate that, it's really hard. But what I will say is like there's my friend, Nick Script, P2W Fantasy. He's probably my closest friend in the space. He grinds much harder than I do, but he has really, kind of helped me with that idea of like, how do you, just prioritize this, and you can always find time. So like, one thing that I do if I'm in the car with my wife and she's driving and the kids are back and they're kind of, they're fine, they're alive. Don't yell at me out there. Like I'll cut up film on my phone then. Like I'll pull up, CapCut or whatever. All right, doing this. And like just finding little, little times to do that. I get my kids down in bed, I read them a story, and I say, all right, go to bed. I'll burn my laptop out, start an article a little bit or something like that. Like there's times you can do it, but it definitely weighs on you. Like it's not easy doing this as like, especially with my full-time job, which has a lot of responsibilities, and doing this as a part-time / full-time. I kind of work full-time too for Football Guys. So it's like having 2 full-time jobs.
Well, it's like three full-time jobs as a parent too, yes. Right? I mean, but obviously, you got to have a passion for what you're doing with, taking all that on. And obviously you've got a passion for the kids and a passion for sports. Rewind back to like when your passion for sports developed. Like, where did that all come from?
For me, it was just an outlet. I had a rough childhood growing up. My mom was a single mom. When, my dad, I think around 9-ish, I think it was 8 or 9, my dad kind of left and I haven't seen my dad since. So my mom basically raised me, but, single mom working 2 jobs, I could get in a lot of trouble. I go play sports. And what it turned out to, I just went and played sports. So my first ever sport was hockey, ice hockey, because I lived in Alaska. So when we lived in Alaska, and then when my parents definitely split up that time, we moved to Nevada, and there's no ice in Nevada. There is nothing in Nevada that way. I was born in Reno. And so, I was like, all right, what else am I going to play? So I ended up playing football, and basketball is when I started playing basketball. So really it came from just meeting friends, because when you move a lot, so I moved a ton. So I probably moved 20 different houses in between like 4th grade to 8th grade, like just moved a lot because not to my mom's fault. She just was trying to find the perfect spot for us. But when you move that much, you don't have a lot of common with a lot of people, and kids are mean. Like kids can be mean too. So I had to, develop a thick skin. I had to kind of be able to kind of give it back to him a little humor. That's why I try to be funny a little bit on social media too. But the other one was, hey, I can play the sport. I'm not bad at it. Then you become friends with people. And that's kind of where it came from, is like, I love sports because I do know the outlet it gives. That's, as an educator too, I know how important it is. So like at my new role as assistant principal, I've been doing basketball tournaments. We're going to do a flag football tournament coming up here in March, where we're going to actually paint the field out there for the kids and doing all kinds of stuff. So I bought a Trophy Smack trophy for these kids to go out there and have, or whatever like that. So really, like, my development of sports and the love for sports came from the fact that like I needed it, because without that, I don't know where I'd be right now. Like I had to have sports to really develop friendships and just to have something to kind of relate to kids about. And that's the power of sports, in my opinion.
That's what I was going to say, is that, the power of sports essentially is displayed right there with how, what you describe. I mean, I think that it brings people together. It gives people, motivation and some inspiration. I love it. That's a good, that's a good story. So you're obviously a Cowboys fan, hence the Du Bois 22. Yeah. That's obviously a nod to the Cowboys and Emmitt Smith. You're also a Michigan Wolverines, passionate fan. Where do those loves for those teams come from, given that you were all over the place?
Yeah, as I just kind of mentioned, I was kind of a nomad when I was growing up, because I didn't necessarily have a spot. Alaska doesn't have a football team, the last I checked. And so when you're looking at how that came to be, like the Michigan one's easy. One of my grandparents sent me a Michigan helmet when I was a kid, like 5. And I just had the iconic Michigan helmet. So literally my fandom came from a helmet. Now I love Michigan. It has like a family tie into it with the helmet thing. But that's essentially where that one came from. And then also, one of my best friends growing up was an Ohio State fan. And I just hated that he was an Ohio State fan. So like I was just that Michigan guy too, to be a kind of a pain. But the Cowboy one, that's more sentimental. That was my grandpa's favorite team. And as I mentioned, I didn't have a dad really kind of growing up. So he kind of took over for me as like my mentor, kind of just to someone there. And he's a huge Dallas fan. He's from Texas. And, he was, one of my, biggest role models when I was in my teens, and he passed away. So he was killed in a drunk driving accident. His favorite player was Emmitt Smith. That's why my is 22 is for him. Emmitt Smith there. So really my Cowboy fandom is because of my grandpa. And I wish he was a Patriots fan so I could win some championships and I could have actually had not pain, but really that's where my Dallas stuff comes from. The boys _22 was essentially for him. When I started my account, I did not think I was going to be in fantasy at all. I did not think of this. It was just a sports account during COVID. That was it. And it's turned into I'm not going to change it now. I might as well just roll with it because it's more of an homage to him. Hey, your sports, you allowed me to find this sports fandom for, football. I wouldn't be here without him either. So that's really where that comes from.
I love that. No, honestly, when the Cowboys eventually win, whether that's, a year from now or 20 years, it's going to taste more sweet, right?
Yeah.
It's going to taste very sweet. So that's really cool. And obviously, congrats on the Michigan Wolverines championship. As a Seattle guy, grew up Huskies were my college team.
Yeah.
So, much respect for that victory and that whooping. So congrats on that.
Yeah, it was a good game. I actually went to the Rose Bowl game with my wife, and we watched that game. That was a fantastic game against Alabama.
Oh.
And I'll never forget that game. One of my best games I've ever been to there. But yeah, no, I sorry we beat you guys. You guys are a great story too. But just to get that W, especially overall, I hate Ohio State so much. There is just this. I just needed to get that championship. So now I'm good. We don't have to win another one for the rest of my life. I am very content with it, having that national championship. We did it, but yeah, I was so excited for that. I was so nervous in the championship game that I thought we were going to choke.
Yeah, quite an achievement for sure. Is that your favorite all-time sports moment?
Oh, no, actually. I mean, it definitely up there, but my favorite, this is going to be weird. I know that this is going to be weird because it's a totally different sport, but I was thinking that when I saw it. My favorite all-time sports moment, it was when Ray Allen hit the 3 to tie it in the Miami Heat game versus the Spurs.
Really?
I'm a big basketball guy. I just don't, I don't cover it anymore, and I can't watch it all that much, but I was a huge basketball guy, a fan of that time. It was in college. I'm dating myself a little bit. So I was in college then. And I just remember all of us in this room just watching, me and my best friends at that time. And it was more of a memory type thing. And we just went nuts. When he hit the 3, it was one of the biggest shots in NBA history, in my opinion. That was actually, and I'm not even a fan of any of them, but just that sports moment. You when you're watching something, you're like, wow, this is one of those things. And it probably right behind that is when Tiger Woods won his Masters this last time, when after his comeback and all of that, just seeing him kind of overcome it. And then he hugged his kid. I started bawling like a baby because I'm a dad now, and my emotions was all over the place. But those two areas are more of my sports moment fandom, in terms of just where I was at, just the context of it all.
I love it. I think context, definitely is key when it comes to those favorite moments. It seems like most people have you attach something to it. Yeah. It's not just your favorite team winning. How about your worst moment as a sports fan? Worst loss? What was it?
The Dez catch in Green Bay.
Yeah.
Because for me, that moment feels like it was that was our year. And we can never beat Aaron Rodgers. The Packers, really, we saw it this year. We got our butt kicked again. And that was the moment where I felt we had a shot to go win a championship. And when they deemed it a drop or whatever the case may be, especially context, just run the ball. It's 4th and 1. We were running really well that game. There's a lot of different things going into that, but that game hurt. And then obviously the Seahawks, Romo fumble when he was a snap, the holder, those two definitely those hurt. Appalachian State versus Michigan hurt too. But since we won a national title, I don't care about that anymore. Now, those two Cowboy moments hurt until we win a championship.
That's fine. I totally forgot about that Romo. Yeah, that was quite a moment back in the day. So when did you discover fantasy sports?
I'm like, so the funny thing is like my first ever league in fantasy sports was I was in high school as a senior. And at the time I didn't realize it, but me and my best friend at the time, his name was Ryan, his dad invited us to his league because one of his buddies couldn't make the live draft or whatever, couldn't make it. So then they're like, oh, you guys just want to do it. So me and my buddy co-owned a team together, and all we did was pick Dallas players. So it's hilarious. Like, because we're in high school, we have no idea what we're doing. So we just picked Dallas players. And I just remember having Bledsoe on the team and like all these guys when Bledsoe was on the Cowboys, and we just drafted them all. So that was like my first, oh my gosh, fantasy football, kind of like, just playing with your buddy. That's really where it came from. And then from there, I just really played with my brother. Like, my brother's 13 years older than me. So fantasy sports allowed us to kind of have a connection, because it's kind of hard when your brother's that old. Like, not a whole lot you're talking about, like an 18-year-old to a 31-year-old. Like, there's not like, it's a little tougher. But the one thing we had was the Cowboys and fantasy. So I'd always play in his league. And my brother is a police officer, so it's hilarious because I'd be in a league with a bunch of like 30-year-old police officers, like an 18-year-old kid, and they'd be like, "Who the hell is this guy?" It's like, "Oh, it's my brother." There, and so like we connected that way. So really, fantasy was just about hanging out with friends and just my family, and just having that communication and just talking crap. That's really where I started at.
I mean, I think that's the foundation of it all. I think most people fell in love with the game with those league experiences. I love that. Do you remember consuming content back in the day initially when you're getting into fantasy?
Nope. I'm gonna tell you what, everybody thinks I'm a liar. I did not consume any content. The only content that I ever really read was Matthew Berry's hate list, love hate list, like on ESPN when it was free. I'm too cheap to get it now, but like when it was free, man, I would read that, and I would kind of go through there. But I tell this story a lot, and it is the truth. So I don't know if his name is David Mendelson. He does Triple Play Fantasy and those type of things. Mindy is one of my closer friends. He invited me on a show one day, and we had Heath Cummings on. I tell you what, Kevin, I had no idea who the hell Heath Cummings was. I didn't know. Like when they invited me on, I just thought, hey, I love it. Hey, this guy's awesome. I thought Heath was great. And then afterwards, I was like, oh, who is that guy? Like I really like him. And I was like, and he's a football guy. And oh wait, he's he works for CBS. And I'm like, oh wow, like that is my, like, I didn't know who the footballers are. I never knew, like, I didn't know any of that stuff. I was very just basic fantasy and like person. Like, all right, I'll look at ESPN's rankings. Where are they at? Okay, I'll just go with that. That's really when I first started. My content was coming from that. Like, I didn't know anything else. When I first got into space 3 years ago, I didn't know anybody. Like, I didn't really know any like analysts or big time guys there. I just kind of winged my fantasy stuff myself. I did my own kind of rankings and projections. The Devi stuff I did on my own. I didn't know there was Devi analysts or anything like that. It was basically just me.
That's incredible. So that's really amazing. So you are like, you love college football. Like, that's your thing, right? So where did that passion come from? Why did college football call you?
Well, it's really just like, I grew up in kind of the golden era of like Reggie Bush and the USC teams and those early 2000s college football. Like, I just had a passion for it. My senior year, I was a huge Vince Young fan for Texas. So like, I love Michigan, but like, for me, like, I just love the players of college football, the narratives, and like, I love the storyline that year, USC versus Texas. And really, that year solidified college football being so special to me, because the end of the year was USC versus Texas, and the greatest game ever. There was no game that was better than USC Texas at the Rose Bowl. Even the one I went to, the Alabama Michigan game, like, that game with Vince Young scoring and beating the juggernaut USC team, them going to the wire all the way the whole season, like, that game kind of solidified everything for me. Like, that was like, oh my God, I love college football. And I kind of just hung around ever since then. And even when Michigan was bad through the Rich Rodriguez years and all of those years, like, I just really liked college football. I like the NFL too. But I'm also a weird sports fan. I love sports, but I'm not that like passionate. Like, I'm not going to break a TV. You see those dudes breaking TVs and burning jerseys and stuff. I've never been that. Like, when my guys lose, I get a little upset. I take a walk and that's it. Like, so like, I just love the narratives and stuff about college football. It's easier to go to games for college football too. They're cheaper. So when I was growing up, we're poor, as we grow up and we do those things, it was either easier for me to go to a Cal football game to go watch Aaron Rodgers for $20 or $30 against like Oregon than it was to go to like a 49ers game. It's just expensive. So really it just came from economics too. I got to go see those games more. I've probably been to over 100 college games in my life, and NFL games, maybe four or five, just because money. It's expensive.
In college football, that experience is special. So
Yeah.
it's awesome. It's awesome to have that passion, at least for college. Are you concerned about like where things are going right now with all the NIL and the mergers and all that?
Yeah, it's tough for me to watch because I think that what made college football so great is going away. So like the pageantry of the G5 and like the bowl games. The bowl games are so awful now. Like they used to mean something like 5 or 6 years ago when Indiana would go 7-5 and make that bowl game. Like that meant a lot for their fan base, and now it just doesn't. So I have seen not my fandom go away, but just kind of like it's hard now. It's like regional almost. Like I'm gonna root for Michigan, and like all this other stuff's kind of cool, but I'm not as fully consumed by it as much anymore. And I think that's happened. I don't know if you watch college basketball at all. I used to be a really big college basketball fan, but after COVID, I just haven't been able to really watch any games. Like I just haven't been able to really dive in. The portal has kind of messed everything up, and that is not. I truly believe that players should get their money. So like I am not on that side either. Like whatever, go get your NIL, go get your transfer portal, do what you need to do. But I do think it's definitely hurt the product a little bit to where it's going to be the same 8 teams that probably compete for a national title every year based on money and based on all of that. And I think even though it was kind of like that with the BCS, you still had all the other stuff that was still built into it. And it wasn't so much about the money. It was more about the other stuff, the pageantry, and like kids were going to play and do those type of things. So I think it is hurting the product overall. And I think college football and in essence, like college fantasy, even Debbie and those type of things are going to take a hit from it. I think it's going to go the opposite route. I think it's going to be negative.
Well, hopefully in time. Obviously, no one loves change, especially drastic change like that, like we've experienced. Hopefully, in time, they get it right, and the new normal is something that we can still enjoy. Obviously, you are passionate about Dynasty and Devi, which is awesome. I think that any niche like that is great to have good people behind it, and you're definitely leading the way with that kind of stuff. Where did your desire to just get involved in fantasy come from and start creating content? Like what inspired that?
Well, COVID, like that's really what happened. I was a coach, so I had no time. So I was a varsity basketball coach. I had 2 kids at the time, and then everything got shut down. So then I was sitting at home, and my wife's like, and I'm I don't know if you noticed, type A, like I need to do something. Like I have to be busy. And my wife was losing her mind. She was like, you have to figure something out to do. So like, I was like, you know what? Like I had been playing in Debbie leagues for a long time, and really I have to give him credit, even though I don't like giving him credit. John Bauer from Dynasty Theory. I was in a random league with this guy like in 2018. So I've known John for a long time. I knew him as like just a regular guy in your fantasy league. He would always drop his freaking podcast in the group chat, right? Like he would always say, hey, here's, and it was super flexology back then for the older listeners that used to know that. So he'd always drop it in there, him and Mitch, and then Dan would come later. And I was always like, what the heck is this, John? I was just like, what are you dropping in here? Like, he's like, oh, well, in the community. I'm like, what the heck's the community? Like, what are you talking about? And so, I was in a league with him. And so he's like, yeah, it's on Twitter. It was during like the COVID stuff. And I was like, oh, okay. So I just joined, and like him and Mitch and Dan, those guys are the first guys I ever followed. Like, and that was like my avenue to like, oh, well, like there's fantasy stuff here. It's pretty cool. And then that's where it really kicked off. And that was my first article I ever wrote that year. Was, I applied to I don't know, what was it? What was their names? Not the Ballers. Kate and Michelle. What was their?
Oh, Ball Blast. Yeah.
Ball Blast. Yes. So Ball Blast was the first, ever, place I sent one in, didn't get a response back, so it must have sucked. So I was like, all right, that was bad. All right, I'm not gonna do that one. And then I got picked up by a very smaller site. I think the Fantasy Champions is what they called it. And another company, another small site, like we all do, just got picked up by these smaller sites. And I just started creating content. And I think I was super bored. I had nothing to do. My school completely shut down to where from March to like June, we had nothing. We didn't have to do anything but just turn in our grades because out here in California, they kind of cut down everything. And that's really where it came from. I got into it with a bunch of guys at that time, and I just kind of went with it. And ever since then, it kind of just took off.
That's awesome. Now, talk to me about your experience receiving the Mike Tagliere Rising Star Award and what that meant to you.
Yeah, that was really cool. Mike Tagliere is one of those guys that I knew of, and like I talked to him kind of, but I was very new in the space. And then unfortunately he passed away, and I never really got to meet a lot of him, but I know a few that knew him, like John McGlynn. I know his neighbors with him, and he would tell me these stories of just how his work ethic and just how good of a person he is. And so, being the first winner for that, I'll never forget when Joe Pisapia and then Fitz basically messaged me, and Fitz messaged me. He's like, hey, this is going to be kind of awkward. I know you don't know why I'm in your DMs right now. And he's like, so, we chose you among everybody. And he kind of told me the whole process. And it was a heavy process. And they went through 5 or 6 rounds. They talked about all the guys that they kind of went through. And I thought that was, it was really cool. I don't take praise very well. I'm not really one of those guys growing up. I struggle with that, but being kind of nominated for that and winning that with people that I really respect, like top echelon people like Fitz, Joe, all of those guys, Scott Fish, especially Scott Fish, had talked to me about that process. And then being like, yeah, we really like what you put out there. That was a lot of fun. And I think to me, to be connected with Tags because of his work ethic and the type of person he was, that's what I aspire to be in the space, because I don't aspire to be full-time. I don't want to be full-time. I can't be full-time. But if I can aspire that and people can look up to that, that's more my thing. Like if I can help someone else get a job somewhere and maybe do that, I'm much happier doing that. And I think Tags was that way too. I mean, he was a grinder. He worked his butt off just like I do. But and I'm nowhere near him, so don't anybody think that, but just being associated with that, I think that was the coolest part of it all.
Yeah, quite an honor. He was an exceptional person. You've heard the stories, right? He's a great guy and truly a great honor to you and a testament to your work ethic and your grind, which everyone sees that. So shout out to you on that for sure. Talk to me about what led to the journey. How did you get to Footballguys? How did you connect with Jeff Bell and everybody in doing the Footballguys Dynasty show and all that?
How did I connect with Jeff Bell? So the one thing I will say for I'll bring it up because I think this is a pod to do it. I brought up something that pissed some people off recently. I said that content creators should be paid, and made some people mad. And, I want to clarify that with, if you work for a big company, you should be paid 100%. Even if you work for a small company, there's ways they can pay you. And it's not exposure. I hate that word so much, Kat. I hate that word so much in there. The way that I would say it is, when I first started, like I said, the Fantasy Champions, they gave me money. They're like, hey, we'll give you $5. Okay. Hey, that's something. I'm getting paid. I know it sounds ridiculous. I'm getting something. But then I joined up with Hammercast, and they're no longer around, but I have my career, I have to say, is for David Stidham. He Hammerjacks. He's on Twitter. I don't know if he's on it as much anymore. But he gave me my start, and he's like, hey, dude, we'd love for you to create content. He had no idea what Debbie was. He's like, we have this website, just write for us. And I got to really iron out some stuff. I got to be a better writer, which I'm not that great of a writer. I'm improving on it. So essentially I just started there, and then then we're on StreamYard, and he's like, hey, do you want to do some shows on YouTube? And I was like, sure, I can do some shows on YouTube. And he's like, hey, do you want to start a podcast? Why not? Right? I'm just at home. Might as well do it. And he kind of gave me the reins, and I learned how to do all those things. And, doing the podcast, my first podcast was called the Double D's, Dynasty Debbie. And so I would just invite people. and I'd say, hey, would you like to come on? Would you like to come on? So I would do a college show and then like a dynasty show, and I would just invite people. And that's how I met a lot of people in the space. It's just like, hey, and that's how I kind of got my chops just talking on a mic, which, can be challenging at times when you first start. It's like one of those things you're nervous at. And then, believe it or not, Jeff Bell DM'd me. Yeah, he asked me to come on my show. So he DM'd me and he's like, hey, I see you're doing like these college breakdowns. I would love to come talk about Ohio State. And I was like, yeah, sure. So I never had talked to him before. And he just DM'd me out of the blue. And essentially, me and Jeff started like just talking. And then he was friends with Christian Williams. I did not know Christian. Funny story, me and Christian actually did not like each other. We had actually gone at it with each other on Twitter before over Trevor Lawrence and Justin Fields. We had gotten into this little exchange out there, and it wasn't like bad, but it was one of those things where it's like, oh, that guy's kind of rude. Like, I don't know if I want to work with that guy. But Jeff was friends with him, and we all just said, hey, let's start a show. And Jeff Lambert, he definitely, it was one of those things like, yeah, you want a platform? You can give us a platform here. And it just turned into like the Devi Royale, essentially. That's what we called it. We talked about college football. And then slowly after we all got hired at Footballguys, so we all got that opportunity to work at Footballguys, they're like, hey, why don't you bring the college show over here? And we did that for 6 months, and it did pretty well. And then they were like, hey, we have an opening on the Dynasty show. Would you like to take that over? And we just been able to do it. We just hard work, kind of working the kinks out there. And, the Dynasty show, one of our episodes this year in January, hit more downloads than it's ever hit in the history of the Dynasty show of Footballguys, by almost like, I think double, which is crazy that people listen to me at all. But like just having people like really kind of love that show and what we're trying to accomplish with it, especially like I go back and listen to our first shows. I'm like, oh my God, we were so bad. Like what we were doing on those shows. But it's definitely a flow. And I would also say this for, people out there that may be thinking of jumping in or whatever, like you're not always going to agree with your host either, like your co-host. Like me and Jeff butt heads all the time. Like, and people think I'm joking, but we're not. Like we do butt heads a lot. Christian's actually the calm one out there. If people know Christian Williams, he actually calms us down a lot. But that's really because we're so passionate about creating content and so passionate about what we do that sometimes you are going to butt heads, but never cross that line. If you cross the line, that's where you can get in trouble. But that's really where it came from. Just getting that opportunity to just do whatever I needed to do. And then it kind of morphed into this thing where Jeff Bell was in my DMs, and now all of a sudden we have a show at Footballguys.
I love it. It's great chemistry. It's good. It's good when people are challenging each other. It'd be a lot more boring, obviously, if everyone just agreed, right? But it's great chemistry, great show, highly recommended. And it's a testament to the community. I'd say, like the way that you met people this way and that way. You are someone. Your name comes up a lot when I ask people about people that have impacted them, in their path, right? When it comes to providing support and guidance behind the scenes, which I think is awesome, right? For you, how much has the fantasy community and the people that you've met, the friendships that you've created, meant to you over the last few years?
Yeah, I mean, it's been great. I think it's been one of those things where I'm meeting people that you can go like stay at their house. I visited a couple people and like really get to meet their families, and do those type of things. It's kind of surreal because you just met them on the internet. And, we were talking about the Expo pre-show, but, it was funny that when I went to the Expo for the first time, I got picked up by Sam Wallace from Fantasy Life. Some of you guys may know him, a really good analyst, and a fellow teacher and his friend. And my wife, like when I got there, my wife called me and was like, please don't get murdered, because these are random people on the internet. Like they don't know who they are. So like, it's been great. And I have to give a shout out, to the people that I started with. Nick Script, PTW Fantasy. He's the lead over at Fantrax right now. David Mendelson at AAA Fantasy. Jacob Dunn, he does stuff for Fantrax, and he does a lot. Starts to show with me, and then Michael Bauer from Dynasty Rewind. Those are my guys. Those are guys that we all started at the same time. We're all in the same group together when we first kind of got started, kind of navigating the space. I would do anything for those guys. Those guys, work their butts off, but also like I've been able to develop friendships. LQ was in that, Laquan Jones as well for NFL fantasy. He was kind of like, he came a little later. But he was someone that really worked, hard at what he did. And now you see it. He's out there crushing it now in LA and doing those type of things. But that was my crew, my group. I had a really core guys where just work around them. And now what I like to do is pay it forward. I think that I can help people. I don't do it outwardly though. Like I don't need to I do a lot of stuff behind the scenes because I don't need people to know I do stuff for other people. Like if I see talent, like Jagger May is another one. Like I saw him really early. I was like, man, I love your stuff. I love this. And like, I'll just send messages to people like, hey, you really should check out this kid. Like, or, hey, you should check out this. Like, I really like this piece of content. Like, I'd always send that to him. And the other thing I try to do, which I've really struggled to fail this year, so I apologize, but I used to go a lot more and like just look up one piece of content like every couple of days and read it and then send a message to the author. Say, hey, I really like how you brought this up. Just random people too, because this is a very lonely hobby, I guess, or career or whatever you want to call it, where you don't even know if anybody's reading your crap. Like, yeah, like you don't even know. Like, you're just like, I hope people find value in this. Like, because there's a lot of people that just kind of click like or whatever. So if I can just reach out to people and say, hey, I really like this point you made. I really like this article. I like this video. Like, if I could do that, it takes nothing to be kind. It takes nothing to do those type of things. And if I can help people find a role or job or anything like that, that's just extra, and like, I love doing that. That's actually my favorite part is when I see people blow up and get full-time jobs and I'm like, hey, that's awesome. That guy deserves it.
And that's the exact impression that I got is just there's a lot of behind the scenes stuff that people don't know about that you're doing. And to me, I mean, that's phenomenal. That's awesome to hear. I love to hear that kind of stuff. And kudos to you. Keep doing that because it's impacting people. Seriously, I love to hear it, and it's truly making a difference.
Yeah, I mean, and it just, for everybody out there, like, you'd be so surprised how much a message of like, hey, I really appreciate this. It was good. Or, how much time goes into things, right? Like this podcast, I mean, you just won an award for it. It's fantastic. But do people really realize how much time goes into these things? Like, it's a lot of work, right? And like, like the rookie guy, we pour hours of hours upon hours of that. So like, if you like it and someone just sends you a message like, hey, really appreciate this, it could go a long way to not quitting. Because, I don't know if you've seen it. I've seen a lot of people leaving the space recently, maybe the last year. I've seen a lot of my friends leave. They said, hey, I just don't want to do this anymore. And part of that, I think, and then part of me kicks my butt too, because I'm like, man, what if I reached out a little bit more and said, hey, really appreciate what you're doing. I really like this video and stuff, because we all get caught up in our own stuff. We're all busy people and we're all there. But maybe if you do just reach out and say, hey, you're doing a really good job, they won't hang it up. Maybe they're just right there on that cusp. Like there's that meme of the guy digging for diamonds and he gives up right before he breaks through. Like that's what I think content creation is sometimes. And sometimes it's up to us, like people that are in the space, to help each other out. Not always just, I feel like there's a lot of negativity sometimes. Like it doesn't have to be like that. Like we might all be competing for the same clicks and viewership and stuff like that. But that doesn't mean you can't be a good person. Like, and it doesn't mean that you can't just help other people out that you basically, are competitors or whatever that means.
Yeah, it's truly inspirational words right there. Let's dive into some rapid fire questions. I'll just throw out a question. You let me know what first comes to mind, and we'll go from there. What do you love most about playing fantasy, like the fantasy football experience?
Money. I like money. I like winning money, and because then I can take my wife out, and she lets me continue to do this more. But yeah, money and just the camaraderie of just talking crap to your league mates. Like I just like beating. Like I don't think I've ever lost to Nick Scripp in fantasy. Like I just beat him all the time. So like I can hold that over his head. Like little things like that.
just little things like that. I love it. What do you enjoy most about what you're doing in the industry right now?
Oh man, right now that's a loaded question because I'm exhausted. So I would say nothing. My thing is I just enjoy the banter back and forth. And I enjoy actually, you know what? This is actually a perfect segue. I'm sorry if I talk too much, but I'm doing dynasty consultations now. So one thing that I've been doing recently through our Patreon, but also like I've been just collecting emails from people and like getting them from different spaces, even football guys too. And I've been doing like 20 to 30-minute dynasty sessions with people just like this, one-on-one. And I've been pulling up their teams. We've been walking through like what they could see. And like, that's been so much freaking fun. Like just meeting people, like, cause you'd be surprised who pops on that Zoom camera. You're like, oh my gosh, you're the CEO for this, or you're like, oh, okay. And just meeting all these different like kids, like in college, and all these people love fantasy. So that's actually kind of rejuvenated me a little bit. Like, and I always say that if you're feeling really run down, do something else, do something different. Like I had never done that before. And you're nervous. You're like, is anybody even going to sign up, or I'm just going to be on Zoom by myself, like talking to myself? Might as well just do a podcast. But they signed up and they did it. I will tell you, that's been so much fun this offseason, just doing that. I'm going to continue to do that. I did 4 last Monday, on my day off, and just sat down with people and really dived into their teams. And that's been a heck of a lot of fun.
I love that. That's really cool. I'll definitely get that and get the word out on that service. I love it. How has your professional career helped you with fantasy content?
Well, teaching just helps me talk, because I teach in front of high schoolers. I don't know if you know this. I used to teach in front of high schoolers, but high schoolers can be ruthless. Like when you make mistakes and when you're up there and you're in front of them every day. So just being in front of them every day and just doing this and discussing and being in there, I think it helped me from a podcast, YouTube perspective. But then just being organized as a teacher, you have to be extremely organized, and you have to teach people things. Like you have to lead them to whatever you're trying to get them to. So from my perspective, I look at my articles like a lesson plan. All right, I'm going to build up. I'm going to teach them this. And then my ultimate goal is to get them to this answer. Here's how I'm going to get it to it. So that's kind of helped me to be able to organize my content.
Nice. If you could name one person that you'd love to just watch a football game with, to hear their perspective on the game, who would that be?
So I'll give you 2. One is my grandfather who passed. I would love just to sit with him so he could just yell at the Cowboys with me. Like, what are you doing, McCarthy? That would be awesome there. Outside of that, if I could sit down with one perspective on the game, man, probably Peyton Manning. I would love to sit with Peyton Manning and just listen to him talk about the game for an entire game.
I love it. What are your favorite hobbies and activities outside of sports?
Oh, just hanging with the kids. I got kids now. I coach their teams, volleyball. We start softball here pretty soon. So doing that, I love to work out. And then golf. If I can get on a golf course at some point in my life, I love it. Even though I'm not very good anymore because I haven't played, but golfing is one of my big ones.
That's great. What's the last TV show that you binged?
Oh, probably The West Wing. The West Wing is one of those TV shows I binged multiple times there. Not a big new TV guy, but The West Wing is probably the one that I binged the most.
Do you have an all-time favorite TV show?
The West Wing. The West Wing is probably like, I'm a big history buff too, so that's where that comes from. I love politics in terms of that. I don't talk about politics on Twitter. I don't want to get canceled, but I love politics. I love that kind of thing. So The West Wing is definitely my all-time favorite show.
There you go. How about an all-time favorite movie?
The Dark Knight. The Dark Knight is probably my all-time. I'm a big Batman, as you can see. I love Batman. I love kind of the comics. Dark Knight is up there, and then probably Dark Knight. I love Cinderella Man too. That's an underrated movie if you've never seen a Cinderella Man.
Yeah, good movie. How about an all-time favorite sports movie?
All-time favorite sport, Remember the Titans. I watched Remember the Titans when I was a kid. I just love it. I used to always make my kids. I used to teach AP, so when I taught advanced placement after the test, I always make them watch Remember the Titans with me every year, just so that they could see it, so I can indoctrinate young youth into Remember the Titans and football. So Remember the Titans is definitely on there.
That's good. Do you have a favorite band or artist or musician?
Not a huge music guy, but Red Hot Chili Peppers is one of those groups that I just love. I can put them on and just kind of vibe with them no matter what I'm doing. My kids love it now. They listen to Red Hot Chili Peppers in the morning when we're like making breakfast, those type of things.
Nice. What are you most proud of, or what are you most grateful for at this time?
My kids' health. So everybody is healthy. My youngest was in the hospital for like a week in the ICU, so she is out of it now. But just kids being not sick and healthy. That's probably if I can have that, then my life is fine.
No, it's a perfect answer. I love it. So as for actual football, obviously you get that passion in Dynasty and Devy and college football. Let's talk a little bit about 2024 prospects. Is there some favorites that you have early on, like people that you just can't wait to see during the process ahead of us?
Yeah, I think, Jalen Wright, Tennessee running back, he's been one of those guys that I think could definitely, if he has a big combine, I think he's going to shoot up into the top 5. If he has a big combine, I think if he can hit his 40-yard dash and around the 4.4, 4.3 mark, I think he's one of those guys that kind of watch. I know this running back class isn't thought of as being like a very good class, but I do think that there are some, some diamonds in the rough. I think there's some areas there where they can really do well at the combine. Xavier Worthy is one of my favorite wide receivers out of Texas. I think that, he's getting hated on a little bit right now in terms of, his ability to catch the football. I know he's got some drops, but the Texas wide receiver is a lot of fun. Troy Franklin, I've loved Troy Franklin. He's a Cali kid. I have a little special place in my heart for Cali kids. He's one of those guys you've seen play at Oregon. Really popped on this year, almost 1,400 yards, 14 touchdowns. So Troy Franklin is one of those guys that I'm hoping gets first-round capital and shocks the world.
I love it. Any other hidden gems that you can think of in the, I guess, that you're excited to see land in the right spot?
Yeah, like hidden gems, Audric Estime, running back for Notre Dame. I think he's got some fun metrics, makes a lot of guys miss. Could be one of those guys that you're like, oh, wow, really pops off for you. Isaiah Davis, another South Dakota guy, just like my guy Pierre Strong, but I don't want to get burnt twice on South Dakota running backs. But I think he's fun. If he can have a good combine, I definitely think he can pop off there. Other deeper guys, Aeneas Smith, Texas A&M wide receiver. Jacob Cowing from Arizona is another one that I think could definitely rise up there and be a lot of fun. Malik Washington from Virginia, another wide receiver is getting talked about a lot of it. And then I guess Roman Wilson. I got to throw a Michigan guy in there at some point. But Roman Wilson, another one that all those guys could, definitely be, I don't know, like you can't say the next Puka, but those guys that, could maybe find a role and you'd be excited about. There's a ton of wide receivers in this class, though. That's the fun part.
Yeah, that's definitely what the news is there's gonna be a ton of wide receivers. So I'm excited. I can't wait to see, what you got this off season through all this stuff. You mentioned the Footballguys draft guide, and there's just so much excitement ahead. I know it's you're taxed right now, but as soon as you get calmed down a little bit, you'll probably be all over this stuff. I can't wait to see where it goes. You've obviously done a great job with establishing your presence and getting involved in this community. Do you have any recommendations for people that want to get more involved in fantasy space and become content creators?
Yeah, I mean, so my biggest thing is, it's a tough space to get into right now. And especially with the community, it's different than when I got into the community. What year did you get into the community?
It's a long story. I would say that it really comes down to when I won Fantasy Football Commissioner of the Year, like 2016, like through ESPN, 2016, 2017. And I was, I've been playing since 95. So I was just a diehard commish, but I didn't know this whole world existed. And it wasn't until that contest where I got a ton of support from just all people on Twitter, because that's kind of where the contest was going through, that it opened my eyes up to this whole community. So I've been really, essentially on Twitter since 2016. So I've seen a lot.
You definitely have, because I would say it was more opening and inviting in 2020 when I was there. I think 2020 soured some people because there was some people that have been in the space for a long time that saw all these new guys come and they got kind of pissed off. I'll be honest. They're like, hey, why are these guys going in there? So if you go into now in 2024, I think, just biggest thing, follow your passion. You love college football, you follow that. You love, the easiest way to kind of gain followers and gain traction is redraft. So if that's what you care about, if you care about redraft, but also you want to gain some following and you want to kind of really kind of make an impact, redraft is perfectly fine. Go there, right? If you like Dynasty, that's fine. And don't pigeonhole yourself. There are some Dynasty snobs out there that think you have to just talk about theory. That's all you have to talk about. No, they don't have to do that. Talk about buys, sells. Who cares what you talk about? Just have passion behind it and have just be prepared, right? Like understand why you're making these takes. Don't be hot takey, but at the same time, like the funny thing I always laugh about is when like people complain about engagement farmers. You're on social media. You already are doing that. Like you're an engagement person. Like nobody wants to tweet something and get no likes. Like I don't care who you are. You could be the smartest person in the world, but you don't want to like do that. So like I think you just have to be yourself. Like don't be someone you're not on the app because you're trying to get a job. Like just be you, like, and that'll shine through and people are going to see that. Like once I stopped caring about what other content creators thought of me and stopped creating content for them, that's when my career took off. So my first year, I was very concerned about that. After a while, I was like, why the heck am I concerned about this? I'm just going to be me and just have some fun with it. That's when people like Joe Bryan and those guys came and reached out to me. So, just be you and be unapologetically you. Like, don't worry about what anybody thinks of you. Don't be a jerk, but also just be yourself. Like, and I think, and now if a jerk is yourself, then you got to work on yourself. It's like, we can make that clear. But just be you and just find your avenue and your passion. You can always DM me too. Like I like giving people a start, telling them where to go. I have some companies on my list of like, I have a how to start a podcast, Google Doc I can share with you. I have like how to be like, what companies to go look for that I think could be good for your brand and who pay you. And I'll send them to you. And plenty of people have started those companies where they can get paid. And I have plenty of contacts now where if you're really interested in it and you send me some stuff, I can send it to those people. Like, that's how Jay Stein got to start. Jay Stein, he works for Footballguys too. He DM'd me out of the blue and said, hey, can you read this and tell me if it's any good? I was like, yeah, it's good. And I DM'd Dennis Bennett, I think his name is, from Dynasty Nerds. Like, you need to hire this guy. Like, this guy is legitimate. And he's like, yeah, I do need to hire this guy. And I didn't even know Dennis. I was just like, hey, this guy's good. So like, just do that and just share your work. Just have some fun with it. But just be yourself and don't be a jerk though. Like, you don't have to be a jerk. Like, don't get caught in a drama either. Like, there's a difference between being too involved in the community and not. Like, there's a fine line. Like, I appreciate people, but that's also not my life. Like, my life is my kids and stuff like that. Like, I don't mind. And you get sucked into it sometimes. You got to just step away. And it's okay to delete the app every once in a while and just take a break.
Great advice. I mean, you nailed it. It is true. One of the things I've admired about you, from afar is just I can tell, authenticity, right? Like you are, you're passionate, you bring the humor, but you are just clearly authentic with how you portray yourself, and it's paid off. And that's great advice. I mean, you just listed a ton of resources that the people can connect with you on. So hopefully people do watch this and connect with you and get some good guidance, because you're clearly doing some great stuff behind the scenes, which, I truly respect and appreciate. Is there anything we haven't covered that you want to share before we close things out, Kevin?
No, I just, appreciate you inviting me on. And again, like, my passion is to help people. As a teacher, I want to see people really, really, find their value and find their worth and do those type of things. So if you truly want to get involved in content creation, come DM me and we can talk and we can chat. Or I've even popped on one of these before, hopped on a Zoom call and said, hey, let's talk. What are you trying to do? If I can find the time to do that, I definitely will be there to help you. Because, I want this space to be full of new people and vibrant thoughts and new thinkers. I think that's important to kind of refresh the well a little bit and not get the same voices over and over. So if you really want to go do that, come ask me. I'm not perfect. I don't have all the answers, but I can maybe try to find you the answer and I'll help you that way.
I love it. I love it. Tell the listeners and the viewers where they can find you.
Yeah, on X or Twitter or whatever you guys want to call it now, at @theboys_22. You can find pretty much all my written work over at footballguys.com and most of my video work at the Debbie Royale YouTube channel.
There you go. Thank you so much for joining me on this episode, Kevin. It was an absolute pleasure to have you on here, my friend. And I look forward to seeing everything you got going ahead of you in 2024.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Thank you for listening to the Fantasy Football Unlimited podcast. Until next time, be sure to follow and subscribe to all of FFU's social media accounts for daily content.